Hello and welcome. I'm super excited to have you here today. We're going to have some fun talking about alignment, organizational alignment, team alignment, company alignment, whatever, right? In fact, you could even use what we're going to talk about today with alignment in your relationships and alignment with your personal life. But we're going to be focused on business. You may have been paying attention to what's happening on Twitter in the past couple of weeks. I mean, technically this whole debacle started back in April, I think it was. 2 weeks ago, it kicked into high gear. And in the past couple of days, things have got kind of crazy, right? You've got a new owner and CEO of Twitter who's come in with a specific set of ideas, what they want to do with Twitter. It's anybody's best guess what the motivation is for those ideas, but there's clearly something going on there. As there is with all of us all the time, there's always something that's driving us. And what's happening with the outcome of that. And that outcome is when this perspective hits this perspective. And what this perspective is the rest of the company. You can even think about this over the past couple of weeks, months. Think back to meetings that you've had with your team when either you or somebody else has brought an idea to the table and sought to discuss it, get support for it, right? And if you don't get these two aspects pointing in the same direction, you don't have alignment and you can't move forward. Now that can happen because this particular direction says no, or this particular direction says no. This channel fires people, this channel quits. What's the famous saying? People don't quit companies, they quit managers or CEOs in some cases. Alignment is about getting people not just on the same page, but moving forward together. And it is more than just the what and the how of what we do that matters for alignment. Some of that is very much the case, but it's generally the artifact or the outcome of what is driving us in the first place. So how we do things and what we bring to the world is fueled by our purpose, our sense of purpose, what we want, what we believe in, what we think is right, what we think is wrong, why we think things that way. And our why is that driving force. Now, there's actually been research done that shows companies with purpose, with a strong why, are more successful. Customers stick around, employees stick around. And that why, that sense of purpose, is communicated in the best way when it's communicated through story, which is why we love that so much. And it's really not that alien a concept when you think about it. We have a group of people, and that group of people either stay together or they fragment because they believe in what they're doing together. An extreme example of this would be somebody who has got a very extreme political view that is very far from your political view. And that creates a resistance, that creates feelings of potentially even animosity towards that person or that group. And that's a good example of extreme misalignment. There's so much of that in the world today. There's so much division in the world today. I found myself reading up on how people think about and talk about politics and how people convince each other. And unsurprisingly, it's not about the data. It's not about the facts. It's about what people believe in, what they care about, right? And if you read any advice on political discussion and political discourse, it talks about finding common ground, right? Identifying something that you can both agree on and then build from there. And that thing to agree on is purpose. Now, I'm talking about extreme examples of politics and belief, if you will, but the same holds true for all human interactions. You might feel strongly against a particular industry. A couple of those might be obvious ones, perhaps. Oil and gas is a much maligned industry. So is the military industrial complex. If you feel strongly about those industries, would you go and get a job at one of those industries? Would you go and get a job at a church or a religious organization that wasn't aligned to your beliefs? As soon as we stop for a second, slow our thinking down, and look at all the potential interactions that do or don't happen in the world, from two people on a date not wanting to be together to the opposite, getting married and starting a life together, to a startup forming with a small collection of people who all believe in changing the world. They've got an idea that they believe that can make the world better, or going for a job at a company that has a great job and you believe in what that company is trying to do, and how they're trying to do it does come into that, right? The work culture. Don't be fooled by the how mention of how in work culture. Work culture is very closely aligned to purpose and why that company exists, why they do what they do, and then how that manifests within the organization. One thing is culture. So alignment requires this understanding, this respect, this meeting in the middle, right? We're coming up on the holidays. Santa's sleigh, right? You've got Santa's sleigh, you've got the reindeer, right? What's the visual that we've all seen is the reindeer pulling the sleigh. You've got all those reindeer all pulling in the same direction. What happens when each one of those reindeer tries to go in different directions, right? You're going to have Santa's sleigh hovering in the air, best case scenario. Worst case scenario, zigzagging all over the place until it crashes, right? The energy is not being channeled in one direction. And that's why we want to be aligned within our organizations. As a CEO, we want everybody to be pulling in the same direction. As an individual, we want to feel safe in bringing ideas to the table so that we can look at the opportunities to have our ideas heard and contribute to the direction of the company. And purpose, as we've established, is one of the most important things for successful companies. In fact, in our last blog, we even linked to some of the resources on that and why purpose is so important. So how do you get to purpose? How do you get to communicating purpose? The best way to do that is not through facts. It's not through statistics. It's not through statements of a capability. It's not even talking about the output and that it's a good thing. What I'm alluding to there is features and benefits that you get from a product. I am not saying that none of these things are important, right? And granted, to a person with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and I very much have the hammer of storytelling. I do not proclaim to say that storytelling is the only thing within the world. Even though we're all living and breathing our very own story, that's only able to happen because we have a functioning brain and body, right? So there are multiple components here, and every business has that too. You have to have a product. You have to be able to create that product, support that product, sell that product, understand how that sales is going through finances. You have to take care of your employees. You have to plan. You have to get the product into people's hands. The list goes on. There's a lot of really important things when it comes to business. But one of the things that we see all the time is a piece of that puzzle that's left out. And a piece of that puzzle, or even a better metaphor than a puzzle, quite frankly, is gears in a machine. We've all thought about that from a negative perspective, I'm sure. I know I have. Let me know in the comments if you have, right? Just being a cog in the machine. But the reality is, it's true. A business is a machine. And those cogs are people, processes, teams, products, and so on and so forth. And if you're missing any one of those cogs, what happens to that machine? I'm a big fan of mechanical watches. I just think these are so amazing. Within this tiny package, there's dozens of gears. They actually even use actual jewels, little tiny rubies and sapphires and emeralds, actual precious stones, tiny little ones, probably just fragments off of something, right? And those are used for the pinions in some of the gears. There's other elements as well within that. There's little ratchets and all sorts of, it's all very steampunk what's going on in one of these. But if you take out one of those gears, one of those ratchets, the watch stops working. It's not just about taking it out. It's also about if one of those pieces stops moving. Why would one of those pieces stop moving? Why do you actually have to have these things serviced? Like a car, quite frankly, especially a mechanical car, an ICE car, internal combustion engine. But any machine needs to be taken care of. And what happens in a mechanical watch over time? Well, some friction does build up, some grease perhaps dries up, some bits of metal get misaligned or break off. Any number of things can happen that stop the pieces moving. They create friction, just like brakes on a car, right? If your brake seize up on the car's not going anywhere. And so how do you release the brakes? How do you make sure that you're servicing the watch of your organization? Well, one of the most important things that you can do is make sure that you have a shared sense of purpose. Now, if you're in a startup, very small, entrepreneurial, passionate group of people who all believe in changing the world and have got this idea, you probably naturally and implicitly have come from a place where you all have that shared vision. However, that isn't guaranteed forever. A couple of things happen with an organization as it finds success, starts to grow, starts to bring new products and new people into the mix. And as that happens, that sense of purpose can either become best case diluted, worst case completely seized up. You can also have a startup where the founder or the CEO, and I've actually advised in a startup where this actually happened, and that CEO, that founder, could not take people on the journey within the organization. They relied on leadership from a power perspective, right? I'm the boss. It's my company. It's my idea. This is what's happening. And we may have seen that in other cases recently as well, right? But I've seen it happen firsthand. And when that happens, you don't take people on the journey. You don't create a shared sense of purpose. And when you don't have a shared sense of purpose, you seize up. The same goes for a big organization, a team, a big company, I should say, a team, an organization, a division, a company. These are all opportunities for friction to be introduced into the system. So one of the things that we absolutely love to help with is unlocking that problem, is coming in and servicing the organization, right? Every so many years, you need to have your watch serviced, right? Same with your organization. Are we still clear on what our sense of purpose is? Where are we going? How have things changed with our company, products, and people? Is our story the same story that it was a few years ago? Now, I want to stop on that for a second and focus on it. Our story. is our story as a company the same as it was a few years ago? Our story as a company, our story as a team, our story as individuals, our stories as families, all of that goes down to the individual level, ultimately. We are going through our lives as the center of the universe. I still remember my mum saying, Matthew, you're not the center of the universe. And it's like, well, you're right and wrong at the same time. Like, everybody is the center of their own universe from a perspective. And the universe being, okay, 3D, 4D, right? You can go into quantum mechanics and argue there's even more dimensions. But if you look at the universe as being this four-dimensional sphere, technically any point within that universe is you could argue is the center of the universe. So you could argue in a couple different ways, hey, yeah, I am the center of the universe. But the reality is there are lots of other centers of the universe, and that's all the people around you, right? But sticking with you for a second, you are placed within this wonderful world and you are moving through it. You've got passions and loves and ideas and friends and family, and you're moving through your life, making your story, making lots of stories. There's the grand narrative of your life, and there's all of the stories along the way. And because we're not alone, we come together, and we come together with a shared sense of purpose, with a shared sense of why, with a shared sense of story. And that's something that's quite easy to see when we look at, for example, religion. A group of people who have a agreed, shared set of beliefs in a story for their religion, right? And we see that for every religion throughout all of history, all the different human religions, right? And people come together when they have that feeling, that safe feeling of a shared sense of purpose and a shared story. So we see this happening, right? We see it every single day with our friends and our family, right? Politics is another one, right? People coming together with a shared sense of how things should be and why they should be that way. Have you ever been in a company and either thought or heard somebody say politics, right? The politics, I hate the politics. I've spent a lot of time in big companies, and I can absolutely confirm that. And in fact, big companies, really big companies like Microsoft and Intel, where I spent my time, are actually kind of like countries, right? So the politics within that is palpable. Where there's people, there's politics, I like to say. So we see it happen within politics. And I even just kind of took that stepping stone to organizations and the companies that we work in. You may also have heard people talk about religion, not in the religious or the faith-based sense of religion, but religiously doing something, or religiously believing in something, or religiously going after something, right? That commitment to it. And you don't have that commitment to anything in life unless you have a passion around it. I have a passion for these things. Toy cars, real cars, Porsches and blue Porsches, right? I have a passion for cars. You've got passions for things, right? And you have a passion for it because you believe in it. You love it. You draw something from that. You draw a sense of comfort from that. You are drawn towards it. So with all of that being said, are you being intentional within your team, within your organization, within your company about how you take people on the journey? If you're a leader within the organization, you have an immense opportunity. I'm a big fan of saying a leader has one thing and one thing only, at least one follower, right? If people follow you, then you're a leader. If you're a true leader within an organization, then you can actually shape the lives of all of those people, take them on a shared journey, and be a part of doing that. Now, you don't have to be a senior manager or a vice president or a CEO to do that. You can do what's known as managing up or managing from below or leading from below, right? Again, if people follow you, you are a leader. If you can how do you get people to follow you? You get them to have a shared sense for something. If you don't have a shared sense, think about sitting around with a group of friends in a coffee shop or around the table with your family, and the topic of going to a movie comes up and somebody says, I want to see fill in the blank, right? Couple scenarios. Scenario number one, everybody in that group goes, yeah, brilliant, love it. Maybe it's a bunch of people who love sci-fi, right? Maybe your whole family loves sci-fi and there's a new sci-fi movie that's come out and everybody just jumps at the opportunity. What if there's somebody in that group that absolutely despises sci-fi? And for this thought experiment, let's assume that the group cares about each other. That group's not going to go and watch a sci-fi movie if that person really hates it. Now, you might be thinking, oh, well, hold on a second, Matthew. If we can convince them that they'll like this movie, then they'll actually want to go see the movie. You're doing my work for me. Exactly. So how do you convince them? You think about what they care about. You think about what their purpose is. Maybe they don't care about sci-fi, but maybe this is a sci-fi thriller and they love thrillers. Or maybe there's a wonderful love story within this science fiction movie and they are a sucker for romantic comedies. You're looking for something they care about, because when you do that, you can find a shared sense of purpose. And the same goes for your organization. If you've got a brilliant idea or even a terrible idea, if you can get everybody first within that immediate sphere of influence, and then within those layers out, right? So team, organization, division, company, start with the small. If you can get that group of people in your team all to agree with the shared sense of purpose, then you can all move in that direction. And the next step, perhaps in a big company, is getting the other teams that make up the organization and the other organizations that make up the division to all move in the same direction. How do you do that? Beyond just purpose, the best tool for communicating purpose is storytelling. Storytelling, by the way, the telling of the story is really only one part of what story is. I mentioned earlier how we're all the center of our own worlds, and yet there's a bunch of worlds centered, right? In any one place where there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of center of the universes. And having that shared sense of purpose, you can communicate that through story. You get to know people through story. They share through story. But the point being is that you're in your own world. You're making your own story, right? You're the hero in your story. There's things you want. There's things that stand in the way of that. There's roadblocks, and there's how you untangle that knot and move forward. That's the power of 3D story. Desire, difficulty, denouement. Denouement is a fancy French word for untangling the knot. What did you do? How did you do it? What products did you use? What help did you have? What processes did you use? What were the outcomes? What were the measurable outcomes? What were the emotional outcomes? All of that, right? So we're all going through that every day, whether it's you're hungry for lunch or you have a passionate idea you're trying to get people on board with. Story is very much a part of how we live, right? And then how we communicate that is how we tell it. And that's why, from an evolutionary perspective, storytelling has been so powerful, because the people, the tribes who were the best at storytelling were the best at communicating where safety was and where the threats were, right? So you can be healthy and safe and you can stay away from danger. You survive, right? And then you have offspring, and then those offspring take similar approaches, and you build that over time. And that is a huge part of story as well. So storytelling, story making, stories, narratives, all of these things are artifacts. Movies and books are just a type of artifact of this thing, this foundational thing within us and how we interact. And that happens within that team. When you're communicating within that team, if you have a shared story, if you can get everybody in a shared story, then you can all align to that sense of purpose. Do you do that through storytelling? You do that through storytelling. But any company is more than just the story, the product, the people. There's a lot of stuff that goes into making a company work, just like there's a lot of stuff that goes into making your life work, your body, your brain, your relationships, right? Water and food. These are all things. These are all super important things. So they're all parts of the puzzle. So how do you get people on the same page? It's not just about telling a story, it's about how you approach that. Way we found that's really powerful is workshopping. And when you take our frameworks and our approach to storytelling, our narrative approach, which is our TRIPS methodology, our TRIPS workshops, we go through transformation, reasons to believe, ideas, and the innovative ideas you have, the problems standing in the way, and the stories, all of that together. I'm not going to go into super detail now, but going through that, using that approach, telling the power of 3D story, practicing telling those stories. By going through that, you can get on the same page and you can come up with a shared story. And you can do that at a team level, an organization level, a company level. So stories are really powerful for doing this. And one of the things I love about what we do, it actually isn't just the strategic narratives we develop. In fact, no matter how much a client loves what those deliverables are, the strategic narrative, our positioning messaging frameworks, persona development, the research that we do around that, as much as they love all that, the one thing that bubbles to the top is also the biggest thing we get referred on, and that is the Go Narrative team helped us get aligned in a way that we've been unable to do, and faster than we've ever been able to do it. And so building that shared story isn't just about storytelling, right? It's about working with the team to understand the structure of that big picture story, that big story, as I like to say, which is a strategic narrative, right? And the narratives in the world that your strategic narrative is interacting with. So yeah, there's some story to this. There's a big part of that is story, but taking your team on the journey, working through understanding what that is. When you do that, you create a shared sense of purpose and you have a shared story. And that shared story is your reindeer pulling Santa's sleigh in one direction and not keeping you suspended in the air or zigzagging all over the place and crashing into the mountaintops. So that's it. Alignment. Where did we start this fun little conversation? Well, we started it talking about Twitter, right? Think about Twitter. What story is the owner and CEO of Twitter living and making? What stories are all the people within the organization living and making? Is there a shared sense of purpose, right? If people are being fired because they're not getting with the program, or people are quitting because they don't believe in what the company is doing, I can guarantee you there is not a shared sense of purpose. There is not a shared big story. And there absolutely is not a strategic narrative that's supporting all of that. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for watching. I absolutely love talking about how we can help bring alignment, how you can get aligned. I love talking about how you can get aligned as a company, how you can get aligned as a team, because ultimately that's where we all feel the best, right? Think about religion, think about politics, think about like-minded people that you enjoy spending time with, a shared sense of purpose. I love this stuff because it's an opportunity for you as a team, as a company, to bring that feeling into your organization. And that's so much more than the practical aspects, the how and the what of having the strategic narrative, having the big story, doing the workshopping. It's how we feel. When we feel good, when we feel like we've got a shared sense of purpose, we can go further together and we can all achieve wonderful things. Thank you very much and have an absolutely fantastic rest of the day and a weekend.